now. There we go. Hello everyone and welcome to today's GESS Talks webinar, The Next Era of Learning, Bold Visions for Change. We're thrilled to have you all with us here today which promises to be a really inspiring session. Today we're joined by top education experts who are going to share their transformative ideas on preparing students for success in a rapidly changing world. From innovative teaching approaches to the role of AI, our panelists are going to cover strategies to bridge classroom learning with real-world skills, so equipping the next generation to thrive. Before we dive in, just a note to say that you'll find a Q&A tab on the side of your screen, so feel free to use that throughout the session and send in any questions that you've got going along. I'm sure the team will try and address as many as we go through or at the end. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to our moderator today, Fiona McKenzie. So over to you, Fiona.
Thank you very much indeed. This is such a great panel. I'm so excited for this today. There's so much that we could discuss that I'm very worried already we're going to run out of time. But the next era of learning, bold visions for change. Before we do a deep dive in, can I just ask you all to introduce yourselves? And with a little sort of bio about who you are before we kind of then start questions. Matt, can we start with you?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Matt Green, and I masquerade online as the rapping science teacher, where I'm most commonly known as, where I take 1 hour science lesson and convert them into 30-second raps. Where I've got 1 million+ followers. And then I also have my business, JGM Science Tutors, which is a team of me and 100 tutors. And we've got clients from UK, Dubai, across the globe. And we tutor mainly families, but we also do schools and institutions helping kids from 11 all the way up to 18 with understanding science and a wealth of other subjects as well.
Brilliant. I mean, so falls into this great category of kind of innovative teaching and really changing the paradigm. Darren, can you give us a few words?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, yes, I'm founder of what was Coxon.AI. Now I've changed the name just very recently to Node Education. Essentially, I'm working at the sort of the intersection between education and AI, and really trying to help sort of demystify AI, make it a bit less fearful, support very practically how school leaders can strategize around AI implementation, how schools can bring it in, how tools can be used to, save time and make students more autonomous, and really just spend as much time as I can understanding the changing landscape around AI and how to sort of make it practically implementable within schools.
Which is such a hot topic at the moment, and it's going to be really fascinating to hear more about that. Gavin, we're welcoming you from Australia today.
Hi, yes, my name is Gavin McCormack. Essentially, I'm a teacher underneath everything, and the base. That's my foundation. I'm a senior lecturer at Notre Dame University, Montessori Australia ambassador here, and I'm an ex-school principal who then left that role, opened an online school. I have hundreds of thousands of children from every country on the planet, and basically we build online experiences for these children where they can take real-world learning and do amazing things in line with the SDGs. And in the last 2 years, we've climbed Everest, been to the South Pole, the North Pole, Costa Rica. We've been everywhere with a film crew, recording lessons for children on things that they may never see, and try to bring them into the classroom so they can be inspired and then work with that as a foundation.
I loved your one on the Antarctic yesterday, which I was watching. It does make it so viscerally real to see it like that. And I love your one of the things you were saying is confidence to try and resilience to fail, and that seems to me to be such an important part of kind of education. Well, always, but especially in this kind of day and age. Michael.
Hello. Hello, everyone. So my name is Michael Bradbury. I'm the Director of Education for the Centre of Entertainment Arts, and we specialise in all the entertainment arts, video game design, virtual production, film and TV, screenwriting. I was the first Unreal authorized instructor in the UAE, and we have a really strong partnership with Unity and Unreal, and have done a lot of work for Abu Dhabi and Dubai governments on introducing video games into the curriculum, using video games in the curriculum, especially UEFN and those really incredible tools like that. So that's a bit about me.
And that's such an interesting interface, isn't it? This kind of education and gaming.
Really
forward to hearing more about that. I was looking at one of the kind of World Economic Forum reports recently, and it was saying that half of us are going to need to reskill in the next 5 years. Partly is that kind of double disruption of the economic impacts of the pandemic, but also obviously the increasing automation of transforming jobs sort of takes place. So we know that the world is the world of work particularly is on the kind of cusp of profound change. And we know that education needs to be really, really plugged into this. So I think one of the things that I really want to explore with you all today is how we can boldly envision changes for this next era of learning so that we can produce the next vibrant generation who are really going to thrive in this new knowledge-based economy, the fourth industrial kind of revolution era. So if our goal is to create agile, empowered learners ready to navigate this evolving world, how do we set about doing this? Gavin, can I start with you?
It's a good question. It's a deep question and a big one. And there's so much to it. We could literally write a couple of novels on this if we wanted to. Funnily enough, I'm writing a book on this at the moment called Raising Resilient Children for Simon & Schuster. And, the title, I think, says it all, that this adaptability, this resilience that our children are going to need is so important. And if you look actually on a global scale at the way that we teach right now, so the way that the average lesson is taught in the average school around the planet, it is the exact polar opposite of how the brain likes and wants to learn. It's the exact opposite. What will really develop this deep learning that we all crave, where children just embody this amazing spirit around what they're learning and they love it. They run to school, they run home, they can't wait to get on with that project. In order to get that going, in order to have that in the classroom, you need freedom, you need choice, you need mistakes that are promoted, you need autonomy. All these things need to be embedded in the classroom. This is at the ground level. And then you have these children who then learn in a way that their brain actually wants to digest the knowledge, and then they can do what they want with it. They take it forward. They run with the lessons that they've had in school, and they pivot and they change and they find new avenues to run their own roost, as it were. What we have right now, unfortunately, is a kind of a system, which is a global system, which starts with the PISA rankings. All the countries are ranked on who is the best. And then that filters down to which is the best school in the country so we can get enrollments. In order to prove which one's the best, we need the best results. So in order to get the best results, we need to test those kids. Now, in order to test the kids, we need a standardized test. Now, in order to have those questions answered correctly, we need a teacher that's going to teach towards those answers. So then I can get that whole hierarchy from top down and bottom up. And at the end of that, there's a disengaged learner who is just stuck in a system. But worse than that, there's a teacher who is doing a job that they didn't sign up for. They signed up to change the world and develop children with confidence, who want to just be happy in their education and choose and have freedom and take risks. But unfortunately, until this system that we're stuck in changes, and it is possible, although it sounds so huge, we won't actually get that, and we won't see those, whatever you want to call them, essential skills, futuristic skills, skills for the future, soft skills. We won't see them come into the classroom when children are sitting down, facing the front, hand up, can I go to the toilet? This is not conducive to the future that we want. And I just want to say one final thing, and that is, you were talking earlier on about the future and how it's changing. I was also reading a report yesterday, and it was really stark. 60% of the jobs that will exist in 2030 do not exist yet. I mean,
that's only 6 years away.
That means we better start moving quickly. And the answer is, as I just said, I feel anyway.
I think, and this is a conversation I think that's going on across the globe, isn't it? It's kind of, with the key stakeholders involved in education, but it's a ship that takes a while to turn. Matt, if we move to you, this creating agile, empowered learners, you have a really innovative approach to this.
Yeah, so for me, it's trying to take what would usually take a long time to teach students and condensing it into the shortest form possible. Because we've all been students in the classroom and it can be very boring lessons. And if there's a way that a teacher can teach it and make it more fun and make it quicker, that's going to be a benefit to everyone. And then if you can make it easy to remember, you've got a triple whammy there, and that's why I connect music with science, my subject, because kids memorize the lyrics, they have it for the test, and then I explain things in such a way. I've got to have my way to make sure I explain it better than it would be explained verbally. So when they're hearing it, they think, oh my gosh, this makes sense. It's got a rhythm, it's catchy, and they remember the words. And that's my method to helping kids remember science. And across the company wise, I can't say that every teacher within JHM is rapping their lessons, but we employ tutors that have got a passion for the subject. And they will teach it to the curriculum, but we understand our learners. We find out what makes them tick. And if we're teaching physics lessons and the kid's crazy for Lamborghinis, we bring that into the lesson. And that, I think, makes a difference, connecting with a student, knowing what makes them tick and connecting it to them.
I think this personalized approach is really important, isn't it? I'm sure something that we'll go into in more detail. But I also love what you're saying about the music. I was just saying before we started how I'd been to the Albert Voyage, I think, recently, and it's extraordinary how your brain can remember all of the words to that years later, sort of set to music. It's and Gavin, you were talking about teaching the way people learn. That introduction to music is a really interesting kind of one. Darren, obviously, you're at that intersection between AI and pedagogy. How is this going to help to create these more agile, empowered learners?
Yeah, I mean, we're still so early with AI right now. So early. I mean, I liken it to kind of the sort of Apple Macintosh, Sinclair ZX Spectrum. Those of you who are old enough to remember that stage of AI. We're only really a couple of years into ChatGPT, and although AI itself has been around for kind of 70 odd years, it's in terms of how it's directly impacting us in our lives. The sort of the educational end, it's really only been the last few years. I think what we're probably going to see is we're going to see a lot of the kind of lower level stuff. It's already being removed. We know AI can write essays. Okay, so what do we do about essays? We will know. Matt, you were just saying earlier on about your Meta Ray-Ban glasses. We know it won't be long before you can wear glasses which are undetectable. So what does that do to exams? So if we move forward even just a few years from now, we start thinking, okay, so essays, well, what do we do about essays? Exams, what do we do about exams? And I think it goes back to what Gavin is saying here is how do we measure what matters? How do we measure progress? How do we measure learning? At the moment, we have a summative grade. What are they for? Well, actually, as much as anything, they're for the next stage in a child's education. So whether it be GCSE to A level and then A level through to a degree. We also know that the university system's struggling at the moment. We're seeing this across the world, particularly the UK. There's a real problem with underfunding. There's a problem with falling enrollment. We're probably going to see some sort of market correction in the university system. This might give us the opportunity to do something quite interesting at the K-12 level. I think I feel, and again, I'm really keen to get other people's perspectives, it feels like we're still kind of beholden to the next level, the next stage, and that it's very difficult to be brave inside a system where you've got not just the teachers, but the students themselves saying, yeah, but what about my revision? What about my exams? So it's like, how can we innovate inside the system that we've got? And I think AI can start to do some of that work for us. It can start to take some of the kind of low level stuff away. I mean, from the really basic stuff, like, helping us to plan and bespoke resources, through to some quite interesting stuff we're already starting to see with computer vision, where you can actually get video, AI that's able to read video to understand how learners learn. So I think that's the direction of travel that we're probably going to move in. But I think the most important thing is to focus really hard on the work that people like Gavin are doing, which is really at the human level. That's where it matters. The messy group work, the kind of grappling with real world problems, that's the stuff that matters. So if we can start to use AI to take some of the kind of the noise away, then I think we can focus our attention on the more important stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting a bit, as you say, removing that kind of noise element. Michael, how do you see, obviously the sort of, the computer games world and education maybe changing this?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say that everyone's answers have been, I've learned so much so far in a very short period of time, so I'm really glad to be here. And I just want to build on what Gavin, Matt and Darren have said there about that. So first of all, the computer game world, building on what Gavin said at the start, is something that I have said before, but Gavin put it far more eloquently than I could. The idea that the processes in the classroom are irrelevant if the exams don't change. What are we preparing the students for? And we can have these, and I have seen them both in the Middle East, where I am now, and in the UK, where we have these fantastic initiatives about changing education. But around February, we snap back to exam factories, because that's the only thing that matters, because that's the only thing that we're objectively measured on. And it makes no sense, because like you said, that's not what teachers signed up for. And all we're doing is disenfranchising these students. Going to answer your question as well, Fiona, about how video games, when I speak to the industry, because the company I work for, we do a lot of work with industry, and our curriculum is based on what the industry needs right now. So we're quite agile in terms of what we actually deliver, and it's reflective of current industry practices in video games, in film and TV, in production, generative AI. And when I had the meetings in the summer with some fairly big AAA studios, they were saying to me across the board, personal skills, critical skills, problem solving, like these people are good enough to get an interview, but they can't, it's that they're falling down on, and because that's not an integral piece of the curriculum, because it's so difficult to measure. So that is what I feel that technology could potentially help with: collaboration, soft skills, problem solving. People have been talking about this for a long time. That's not new. None of us here think that is new. So what's happened with it? Are we any better? If we just take a step back, are the schools better at that now than they were a decade ago? I don't know. And so to answer your question about how can video games work, yeah, you could use them as problem-solving tools, but what happens when we have to get ready for the exam? We had, obviously, COVID. I don't know if you remember it. It was a while ago. And we had a perfect opportunity to revolutionize, to change the education system. But the second we could, we snapped back to exams in May in the hall. And if that, and again, not to be pessimistic, because I don't want to be pessimistic about it, but if a global pandemic where we had to adapt how we delivered content isn't enough to change how we do it, then I honestly don't know what is.
Yeah, it was quite scary how quickly we all snapped back into doing, I mean, things like shaking hands, which we all thought we'd never do again. And you know, those old habits die very hard. And I think that was particularly true in the education sector. Although I do think we did see an acceleration of the use of technology in education, which we probably would have taken longer without with the pandemic. I'm very interested in what you were saying about sort of, you know, the soft skills in employers, because in my work with working with students, applying to universities and things, and trying to educate parents to say you don't have to study a particular discipline. It's much more about the transferable skills that you're going to take forward, because actually employers are looking for attitude, and they can teach you how to use an Excel spreadsheet. But I think for a lot of parents, it's a very scary thing, because we've all grown up in a different kind of generation where those things were deemed to be important. So there's a lot of mindsets that need to be shifted. So we've all agreed that you know, the current system we have is not really fit for purpose. And agree that there's a lot of challenges to changing that. But how do you see the learning environment of the future looking like? You know, what would you love it to be in order to facilitate these changes and to educate these children in the way that we're all talking about? Gavin, can I come back to you on that one?
It's a good question for me personally, because I'm a Montessori teacher. So I don't know if you know Montessori, but it's quite interesting in the fact that our classrooms do not look like your average classroom. I don't know if you've seen the head office of Airbnb in San Francisco, or Canva in Sydney, or Google over in Silicon Valley. There's no desks, there's swing chairs, there's mats on the floor. You can kind of guess what it looks like. You can choose where you want to work. You don't have to come to work if you don't want. You choose your own hours, but you get the job done. Now, you go to a Montessori classroom, you'll see almost the same thing. And what's quite unique about it is it's absolute freedom within limits. And those limits are, you can't climb out the window and take an Uber to the city, and you can't go running with a pair of scissors. You know, anything else is a yes. And what you find when you give children this freedom is that they start to learn the boundaries very quickly, and they start to work as a cohesive community that supports each other very quick. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine who works in a very prestigious school in Sheffield. I won't name it, just last week. And he was saying even his 15-year-old children in his class, the rule in the school is you must put your hand up to go to the toilet. Now, just think about that for a second. And I would guess, and I've been to many schools, and I'm sure we all have, in many schools around the world, that's mandated. If you need to go to the bathroom, you need to put your hand up. Now, firstly, the teacher is then saying to the children, I do not trust you one bit. I just don't trust you. And I don't trust the 150,000 years of evolution that your brain and your bladder have been communicating to say, I'm full. Can you please go and empty me? I don't trust that either. I'll be the gatekeeper of that. And you will ask me. And sometimes I will even say no. Right. So just take that as that simplest thing. There's a trillion other things that happen in the classroom. But that lack of trust to the children, that builds character. That's values. That's your school consensus. That's your constitution. That's who you are. In this school, we don't trust the kids because kids are naughty. Now you take that away and say, you know what, I trust you. And if you make a mistake, if you need to go to the toilet, you just go, no problem. And sometimes you might go there and chat with your friends. Sometimes you might screw up some toilet paper and throw it on the roof just to see if it sticks, because that's what children do. And you will make a mistake, and mistakes are fine. We'll reflect upon them because that's what life is like. So when we talk about this future school, this future focused school, I've been to, I used to go on school tours as a school principal, pretending to be a parent of the kids who are graduating to find the right school for my kids. And I went to one school and the principal said, you're going to love this school. And he took us class by class by class. There was 1,000 children in the school. Every child had an iPad in front of them and it was open and on. And he said, we're a future focused school. Now, for me, it didn't look future focused at all. That could have been an abacus in front of them for all I care, because the future is about engaging with each other, communicating, having confidence, having resilience, making mistakes, giving things a go. Look at any of these world leaders and the people who've struck it rich or being successful. They all talk about taking risks and being resilient and having determination. And we're just missing it at the moment because our future focused is all about tech only, and it's not about those humanistic skills that we need. And I think you need to find a beautiful mesh where they both work together. Tech is an amazing tool, but we are also an amazing tool, and we sometimes forget that, I think.
I think as well, I've been, and I'm sure we all have, we've been in assemblies and where I've been told that the schools I've worked at are really innovative because we use iPads. And I was like, innovation is a dangerous word, because a lot of those children will have had an iPad thrust in front of them before a pencil or before a pen. What's innovative about that? They're over a decade old. And it's that's not. I mean, it's how you use them, but how are they being used? They're all being used. Don't get me wrong, there will be some exemplary practices, but from what I've seen, that's not always the case. Anecdotally, of course, I can't talk for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting. If I could just build on that, I almost feel like Gavin, you speak, I'm just like, I can't really add much more to that, because like what he said. But when it comes to things like iPads, really, when you look at an iPad, it's just another shiny rectangle. So basically what you've done is you've taken a big shiny rectangle on the wall and you've stuck the shiny rectangle on the desk. It hasn't actually changed anything. It doesn't change the mode of delivery. It doesn't change the pedagogy at all. If anything, it can actually make classroom management harder. Because, my son has an iPad. What does he do on it? He watches occasionally his cartoons and he plays his little iPad games. That's what he does on it. That's his tool. He has a laptop and he uses the laptop and he's learning to do some coding. And that's his learning device. The iPad's kind of an entertainment device. So I think there's also a bit of a problem there around these sorts of devices and how the kids perceive them. So I think that's definitely something that we need to consider. And I would agree with Gavin. I think that the future of education, the future classroom, it's not really a classroom, it's a space for learning. It's different spaces for different types of learning. I would love to see smaller groups of kids and parents gathering together and educators gathering together, and just a much more kind of family holistic mode of learning. So it's less about, I'm going to go to a rectangle. I mean, our children's lives are bounded by rectangles, rectangular classrooms, rectangular iPads, rectangular whiteboards, rectangular paper, rectangular goals. Everything's rectangular, and actually life is not rectangular. Life is messy and complicated and challenging and all over the place. And I think one of the reasons why AI interests me, bear in mind, I led the first iPad one-to-one cohort in the UK. So the first state sixth form in the UK, I led that one-to-one back in 2011, and I worked for Apple for many years on their vision and planning, and I worked with schools all over the UK, helping schools to adapt. So I've kind of been there from the beginning. It never really did what I think AI is going to do. The reason is AI is a bit random, a bit messy, and a bit creative, and a bit kind of all over the place. And I actually think if we hit it right with AI, it can actually accelerate our humanity in the way that an iPad never will.
But Matt, in a sense, you've taken this out of the traditional classroom, haven't you? So how do you see the learning environment in the future?
So I've got a very clear-cut vision for what I would like classrooms to be like. I might throw a spanner into the works what people have said here, because as much as I like people and I like working together for these sorts of things, I think tech in the form of AR, VR, and AI 10 years from now can be phenomenal. Like if we think of us all being in the classroom, right, and we've got 30 kids, we can't really spend more than 2 minutes with them per lesson. We've got to mark, we've got to plan, we've got to do all these things. But if we've got a situation where we've got an AI bot, far more advanced than it is nowadays, that can sort of be with each child, know their weaknesses, know their strengths, know where they've got to push them, and that can be fed to us. So we can be their motivator, because you're never going to be motivated by a robot saying, hey, well done, you've done a great job. You need that human. But, if I've got, little Timmy over here and he's struggling in these areas, this AI bot could be teaching him, marking his work. I get fed the results. He was on 12% earlier today. He's now on 36%. I can have a chat with him, see where he's improved, and be that motivator. But basically, all these AI bots are allowing each student one-to-one access to an educator in a way that, I can't split myself 30 ways, but the AI and the bots can essentially help each teacher do this. And I would love to see that in the future. I hated marking in the classroom. I always thought it was a total waste of time. I'd rather spend planning and spend that time with kids, and AI can help accelerate that. We can raise every child, then spend the time talking to them about their improvement rather than wasting time with marking and telling them, seeing how they improve and telling them well done for that sort of thing. And that is where I think the future is for AI in education, as well as VR.
Yeah, and which is an exciting kind of vision to be having. But what, Matt, when we think about that, what are going to be the essential skills that students are going to need for this new education, this new kind of world we're evolving into?
I think about essential skills, and there's quite a lot with the evolving space we're in, because I think Darren's mentioned this before with regards to, I think, essays and writing. When we set students tasks now, or 2-3 years ago, they can copy and paste what we can tell. So we know when they've written it. But with AI, we don't necessarily know. So we need to be assessing in new ways, right? 40, 50 years ago, there was no calculators. We were teaching kids how to add up and do sums correctly. Then the calculator hit. Then we have calculator-based exams. So we're allowing students to use this tool as part of what they're doing. And I think we've got to do that with AI, right? Every kid needs to read and write and know how to do that stuff properly. But when they grow up and they're writing emails like we are, you don't need to be spending 15 minutes writing an email. You can just get the computer to do it for you in, say, 14 minutes. We just need to find ways of assessing how they can do this. Like, let's say you've got to do X, Y, and Z, and use AR to get this project completed, and then assess how they've used it. I hope that's answering your question there, Fiona. I'm not sure.
No, absolutely. But I think it is these kind of skills. And then Darren, back to you and the AI. What do you see as the essential skills? Because there's a lot about prompting, for example.
Yeah, I mean, look, I can teach someone to prompt in 5 minutes. It's not hard. The interface with AI will become easier and easier. Okay, so I think the actual technical skills of leveraging AI to do stuff for you, and most students are already learning that, mainly through TikTok. I mean, there was a recent Bernardo study, it was only published a day or two ago, and they asked students, how have you learned about AI? More than double the number of students who learned about AI through TikTok than any other platform. So we know they're learning. We know they're learning all this stuff. I think the single biggest skill, the single biggest quality that we need to engender in our students is to be memorable for the right reasons. This is so important. We're now in a world which is getting more and more homogenized. Everyone gets A grades. I mean, the number of firsts, university firsts, has gone up from 10%. I think it was about 10 years ago. It's about 30% now. So 30% of our students are getting a first degree from university. An increasing number are getting straight A's, and now they're all writing their CVs using AI. And so the challenge that employers, and if we look at the end game for education, ultimately, obviously, it's to become a better person and to learn about yourself and to be a good sort of decent human being, but also it's to get a job or to start a business and to earn money so you can pay your rent. You know, if you're just going down to first principles, you need to do this stuff. So I think the single biggest quality, I think it goes back to what Gavin is saying. You sort of keep referring to what you're saying, Gavin. So agree with what you're saying here. All of the things that you're doing, the kind of the problem solving, the engaging with the real world, getting your hands dirty. These are the things that will give young people the qualities to be memorable, the qualities to go out there and say, here I am, I've got something of value to offer the world. And then they become valuable members of society. The challenge we have in our education system is it tends to be about one size fits all. You know, everyone that gets the same A grades, everyone gets the same first. It's very hard to differentiate between these people. So I think as schools, whatever we want to call it, it might not be school in the future, whatever the terms that we're using, these places of learning, we need to teach our young people how to be, you know, how to stand out, but for the right reasons. So I think that would be my number one takeaway.
That's such an interesting perspective. Gavin, what would you add to that?
So much to add to that. I mean, it's interesting to hear all these different perspectives and what's happening all around the world. It's just so enlightening to see that. I think for me, there's a problem at the moment in the world with levels of hope in students and in adults too. If you look at the global scale of hope, it's called the Hope Scale, came out of MIT, and it basically measures how hopeful we are for the future. Now, I probably don't need to tell you, but if you are an 11-year-old sitting in the back of mum's car on the way to school every day, and she's got the radio on just playing the regular news, what will you hear? Rape, murder, war, beheadings, forest fires, oceans, pollution. It looks bleak. And then you say to the kids, by the way, guys, you're nearly ready to graduate. You can head out there into the world. You're going to be an adult. They go, I don't want to get out there. It sounds terrible. I want to stay here where everything's lovely. I just get to choose who I play with on the playground and what snack am I going to have at lunchtime. And, you know, this is a very safe world. So I think there's a few skills. I think confidence is one. Independence is definitely, for me, it's the pinnacle. When you have children who are independent, who can think for themselves, choose for themselves, make decisions on their own, then you have a future. And, you know, going back to what Darren said about, you know, the success criteria early on, like how do we measure success? I was just recently in Iceland. I was talking to a teacher there, and he said, in Iceland, they quantify a success of a school not based on what grades they get this semester, but what the humans are like who walk on the street in 20 years' time. And, you know, I think that's how we have to think. It's not about money. It's not about jobs. It's not about any of these things. It's actually about humanity, having a set of human beings who can think for themselves and make rational choices with ethical reasoning, moral understanding. They know how to decode things, got critical thinking abilities, and they've got intuition. And they do things for the right reasons because it's the right thing to do. And what we have, unfortunately, now, when we're living in this world as adults, is we have a group of leaders all around the planet, and there's some good ones, but there's a lot of bad ones. And they come and knocks on their door and says, hi, by the way, Mr. CEO, should we cut down that forest outside? There's loads of lithium underneath it. And the CEO says, well, aren't there orangutans in that forest? He says, yeah, but there's a load of money to be made in just bulldozing it and digging it up. And he says, you know what? Dig it up and bulldoze it. And what we need is the person who says, you're fired for even bringing that question into my office. Get out of here. You know, why would I ever do that? And we don't have that, and we need that. So I think there's an omelette of skills that we need, but I think having independent children is one of the key ones for me.
It's very interesting. I was talking to a retired head recently who said his design brief for kind of educating children was somebody he wouldn't mind living on a desert island with when they're 26. And I thought that was quite a good sort of metric. But of course we don't. We send them off into further education. They then go off into their kind of careers, and you know, inshallah, we then keep up with them from our various perspectives. But yes, how do we give them that kind of moral courage and that grounding to go off and make the right decision? Talking of kind of sending them off into the world, you know, the next question is, what will the jobs and careers of tomorrow be? Michael, I'm really interested to kind of hear your perspective, because, you know, there you are working in industry, which is very much looking at that. Where do you see the jobs and careers of tomorrow heading?
That's a really, really good question. So the jobs that exist now that people probably aren't aware of, I do a lot of work with a company called Epic Games, who make something called the Unreal Engine. And the Unreal Engine was predominantly an engine for making video games. That's how that piece of software started out. But as technology advanced, that skill set, those artifacts, the things that were made in the Unreal Engine, made their way into film sets. So now when you watch The Mandalorian or you watch some of the movies, the entire background is not green screen. Now it's built in the Unreal Engine. So there's a whole, like Gavin said earlier on about how many jobs are going to exist. They didn't exist 5 years ago. Now you can go on to, in the film industry, and using this one particular software, you can create backgrounds and worlds. That software is also used in 60% of all cars for the human machine interfaces. So BMW use it for their new heads-up displays. It's across there. So what's happened there is one technology that was very, very good at creating immersive experiences has been used across a wide range of different industries: oil and gas, automotive, simulation. We talked about film and TV production, and that's just one seed of an idea that exploded and created whole heaps of jobs in different areas. So I kind of see that happening, and that's what I believe is it'll be stuff that we believe, stuff that's happening now, just being used in other areas. This wasn't feasible 20 years ago. As technology advances, like Darren said, we're only 2 years into ChatGPT. Who knows what in 5 years the areas of work will be able to do from this? How is that going to affect there's a lot of generative AI used in film and TV production now, where actually jobs are being eroded because a lot of the work is being done by this, but new jobs are being created. So it's something that I try to not stay ahead of, but at least look into. But it's so, no one predicted Epic being used in all these areas. So it's just the idea of how can things evolve now to be future focused learning, future focused jobs that are needed, and it could pivot. It could completely pivot. Like it's almost too dynamic to pin down, isn't it? It's like trying to nail down jelly. I don't know. It's a really difficult question. What are the jobs going to look like? And sorry, going back to what Gavin said, and again what Darren said and what Matt said, which I think were fantastic. We've got to change the education. We need to make these people ready for work. Well, then don't the employers have to change their expectations? Should be then as well, because how many, when you're looking through job adverts online, the minimum requirements are degrees in this, so that's another reason that the education's not changed, is because it fulfills the job market for people, for what those people want as well. So if we completely dynamically shift educationally, well, what's going to happen with the job market? So they have to together adapt. The job market, the employers, what's expected has to change for the education to go into it as well.
We're going to have a very good panel on that at GESS, actually, in a couple of weeks' time, looking at the alternative pathways into the workplace that don't just have to be academic. And I think it is exciting to see how that is beginning to open up, but there's obviously a lot of work still to do that. Darren,
I will add on top of that as well. While that still exists, and when I was talking to the industry about what do people want, they they weren't really interested in the academia of the graduates coming out. They wanted to know how impactful could they be. Do they need 4 months of mentoring from a senior dev? Really not got that time, or can they just hit the ground running? And that's what they're really interested in. A degree is nice, but actually, time is money, and we need to do stuff straight away. So, that's
value of degrees. Darren, have you got something to add about jobs?
Yeah, I just completely agree with everything Michael said. I can see that the biggest skill moving into the future for young people, and if I've got a 17-year-old, she's quite academic, she'll go the academic route. I've got an 8-year-old boy. Do you know what? I'm getting him to code, I'm getting him to learn how to talk to computers so that they can understand him. Most of the coding in the future, as it's being done now, will be done with AI. I can now code full stack. Okay, I'm an English teacher who can code a full stack website. How is that possible? I can code using Swift. I can now code iPad applications because I've learned how to work with AI to talk to computers to quite an advanced level. Okay, I'm not a full stack developer, but I've become one, and I want my son to be the same. So we work together. I think that what I just want to pick up on one thing Michael just said there, because I think what you're saying is so key. The ability for young people to appropriate, to play with, to mess around with, to red team, to hack in an ethical way, to take what is existing and to do other stuff with it. That's going to be so important. And I think that again comes back to what Gavin's saying about independence of mind, independence of spirit, confidence to take risks, the ability to take risks, and again, going back to allowing kids to go to the toilet. All of this feeds together. We're in a very risk-averse culture now. If you look at when we grew up, I'm sort of looking at Matt, but you're quite a bit younger. No disrespect to anyone else here, but I'm going to say Michael as well. But I'm very firmly Gen X. I mean, really, I am the archetypical Gen X, born in 1970. I know it doesn't look it, but I was able to take risks in the 1980s. Okay, we did crazy stuff because no one was filming it with one of these. The problem we have now is that we have a generation growing up who are very risk averse because they're nervous about being caught on camera, being posted on TikTok. It becomes quite a challenge for our young people because they just feel surveilled by technology. We have to give our young people the opportunity and the confidence to take risks, because those are the people that will be most successful in the future, who can take lots of different ideas and think, well, I wonder if I take this AI and this app and I mash them together and see what happens. That's when exciting stuff happens. If all we do is do the same syllabus and the same A levels and the same degree and the same this, and we just produce these kind of square, boxes, then that's not the way the future's working. The future's amorphous and it's changing all the time. So we have to give our kids the qualities to go into that world and the ability to take risks. Because if we don't, we're just gonna lose them. And we will lose them, and we're already losing them.
But there has to be a balance here, doesn't there? Sort of between the sort of traditional academic knowledge and the practical skills development at kind of some level. Matt, how do you feel about that? How can educators strike this balance between skills and knowledge?
So that again, between skills and
between academic knowledge and skills.
Well, I mean, the way we deal with it in our company is we obviously want students to pass exams. That's what customers are paying for us. But that doesn't mean we don't want students engaged and we don't want them enjoying what they're doing. That flows through the veins of what we do. I want students to come out of lessons with us. When they finish their term with us and they finish the time that they needed, they enjoy the subject. They have a love for the subject. And they go on to flourish with whatever it is they do. We only teach science in the company. There are skills that they need to gain, practical skills, doing various scientific experiments that they might need to do at uni. And if they go on to do science for post-degree, they'll need those skills as well. We teach them the basics in lesson here. I hope that answers.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a complicated one. Gavin, this kind of balance, because we do want them to have some academic knowledge combined with skills. How do we sort of, square that circle?
Yes. Can I go back to Karen? I love it. You don't like squares and you don't like rectangles. I've noticed that. That's coming out of your, I just don't want squares and rectangles coming out of these classrooms. And I love that. It just sounds
You want
so
a
boring and
circle, a square.
mundane. Yeah. And we want any shape that comes out of that room. And I think, going back to your point earlier on about what are the future jobs of the future, what's going to fit. In actual fact, what seems to work is when children get to discover what their niche is as early as possible. So in the average classroom around the world, children sitting in rows or in pairs facing the front, and the teacher even chooses where they sit, separates the kids who might be disruptive, all those lovely things that are reminiscent of actual society. So we get rid of all the stuff that's actually out there in the real world, we remove it. So the risk, the conversations, the chatting, the making mistakes, the breaking rules, we move it all so we can have a quiet classroom where everyone's listening. Actually, what we need is a classroom that's reminiscent of what's actually out in the real world. And then we get real humans being developed in our classroom. But what's even more, I think, important is that we give them the freedom to represent their research, let's use that terminology, in a way that suits them. So, for example, we've been learning about snails this week in my year 3 class, okay? And instead of giving them a textbook, a worksheet, or something that I've produced where everything's the same, it's a cookie cutter, I say to the children, now you've got 45 minutes. I've told you about everything that I know about snails, guys. You can choose any mollusk you wish or any insect, and you can work with who you want. You can use everything in the classroom. It's a yes. You don't need to ask me. But in 45 minutes, we're going to meet on the carpet and you're going to share your information with the rest of us. Now, for 1 second, there's a bit of panic where everyone's like, oh my goodness, I'll work with you. You get there. And there's a bit of movement. Then you wait 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and it all settles. And there's this beautiful cacophony of sound. And there's this hum of work. And everyone's doing different stuff. What's the teacher doing? Watching and looking for essential skills. There's leadership, there's negotiation, there's confidence, there's independence, there's empathy over there. And what happens with the children? They all come back with something different. And if you do that often enough, you will see what everybody wants to be when they're older without them even telling you. Your dancer will come back with a dance every time. Your artist will come back with a painting. Your future journalist will come back with some writing every single time. So what happens at that point is they go to that pinnacle of primary school, go to high school, they get to choose what subjects am I going to choose to go to university. They don't choose what mum tells them. They don't choose what their friends are doing. They choose the ones that resonate with who they want to be because they discovered it when they were 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And it all comes down to independence. Give teachers trust, give children freedom, and then you get this. And then you don't have to worry about jobs because they will choose the job that they want. They'll never work a day in their life because their profession is their passion. And quite often we get 65-year-old guys sitting on the beach in Goa, depressed because they've not done anything with their life. They're being an accountant. They're at some ashram going, oh my goodness, I need to do some good in the world because I actually haven't done anything, but I've got a Maserati and a $20 million house. And that's the exact opposite of what we want. And I think it all stems from that initial outset of what does the classroom look like and how do we quantify success?
As a former teacher, 90% of what you're saying absolutely thrills me and 10% terrifies me about like how on earth would that kind of work in a classroom. But you're so right. And we've just got a question that's just come in about emotional intelligence. And Gavin, I think a lot of what you're talking about relates back to that.
Sorry, do I have to read it?
No. It's about, I just wondered whether you touch on emotional intelligence.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I live it because I run a Montessori school. So we have a lot of, it's all about EI. I think, when you think about EI and you think about how that looks, you really have to be model the behavior you wish to view in the people around you. So we have adults who are in charge or the guardians of our children, the teachers and the parents, and they pretend to be I know everything, I have all the answers, I'm the oracle, I don't cry, I never get upset, I'm just all the time constant like this. And children need to see the real person. There's no problem in my school when a teacher says to children, by the way, guys, there's no lessons this morning, it's all independent time. There was a mosquito in my bedroom, I haven't slept a wink. Is that okay if I just read my book over here? And the kids are like, oh, you're a human, just like me, and you're tired sometimes, or you're worn out, and I'll have empathy for you now, and we'll just work over here. And it sounds whimsical, but I run a school like this, so I know it works, and I test it, I test the waters out. So I think EI If we want EI, we have to live it ourselves. We can't pretend that we don't have emotions and we're not tired and we're not upset. And if we make a mistake as a teacher, we accidentally shout one day. We say, I'm so sorry about shouting. I was upset because someone ran over my cat. Or maybe you don't divulge that to your kindergarten class, but you tell them the real deal. And then they realize it's okay to be real, just like you are. I think that would solve a lot of our problems in actual fact.
Yeah.
I should have got a job in your school, Gavin, and I probably would have stayed in the classroom.
It's funny you say that because, like when you say this to people, half of the people go, that's not possible. And then the other half of the people, they come to see it and they go, oh my goodness, where do I sign up? Like, when can I put my kids into a school like this? But it's not hard, actually. It's not hard, this thing we're talking about. In fact, if you go back to the early 70s when teachers had full trust, this is what it looked like then. And we're the result of those guys. So we're not doing too bad.
Yeah, and we need to get back to that. We've got another question that's come in here, wanting to know a little bit more about kind of personalization. Personalized approach to learning. Darren, do you want to just touch on that? And then Matt, let's jump.
Yeah, I'll touch on it just very briefly. So there's this personalized learning is a very big term that seems to become very important, largely because if you ask ChatGPT, it tells you that's one of the number one impacts of AI. I take a slightly contrary position, and I think it's important to make learning personal, to connect. And I think, again, it goes back to, what Gavin was saying about connecting children with their passions from an early stage to get them interested in the personal nature of learning. But if we then talk about hyper-personalization, which is the kind of one of the big terms when we look at how AI could individually curate every single learner's pathway exactly, and it knows how they feel and it knows the best time they're going to learn and it can read their emotions. The big danger of that is that it silos children and they become part of this little individualized learning bubble. And I don't think that's a good thing. So even though I'm sitting right in the middle of AI right now, there are lots of things that ChatGPT will tell me, which I just fundamentally disagree with. And that's one of them. I think we want to make sure that learning is interesting and relevant, that our children are working with adults who they trust and peers that they trust around them. It doesn't always have to be teachers, people around them that they trust. If it's personal, if it's relevant, if it's interesting, if they feel they can add value into the world, then they will just learn. And I see this as a parent. I see this time and again as a parent. If my children are interested and they see it's relevant and they want to work with me because I'm their father, their learning accelerates. Just putting them in little individual silos, I just think I don't want my kids sitting in front of computers all day. I want them dealing in the real world, but supported by AI. So I think for me, it's more about personal than personalization.
Matt, could you just talk to that as well? Because obviously you referenced earlier on, if you've got a kid who's mad about Lamborghinis, and you can kind of tailor the lessons around that.
Yeah. I mean, it's essential for everything we do, because obviously kids that are with our organisation, they're in mainstream school. They go to their mainstream school during the day, but mums and dads want them to have that one-to-one support. And, it's one size fits all in the classroom, more or less. But with us, you've got one teacher with one student, and that teacher is fully there for them. And our tutors will find what makes them tick, as I've always done when I've been in the classroom and when I've taught kids myself one-to-one. Is a kid a visual learner? Are they auditory learner? Do they have like rap music? And when you find out what makes them tick, you can teach them in a way that will resonate more with them. And also comes down to the actual subjects that they find difficult. Some kids are going to find the physics harder. So you focus more energy on that. Some kids will find a different part of science harder. So you focus on their weaknesses, and everyone's weaknesses are going to be different. And you plug those gaps first. And I always think that's really important. I think kids, when you build their confidence up, they start to flourish. And if you find where they're weak at, and you can make it a difference there first that they can visually see, they start to flourish. They're getting 12% in their tests. They have a few lessons, and now they're getting 60%. And they go, oh, I thought I was rubbish at this. But actually I'm doing okay. And the second they get that moment, they start to improve. And what I was saying earlier about AI, as educators, as teachers, we'd like to think we can do a pretty good job at that. But I think in the future, I think AI will probably be more rapid at working out where their weaknesses are and what methods it can use to help plug them. It will never, as I said, it will never replace the motivation. But I can quite easily see me sitting with a kid, or any of us sitting with a kid, who might take us 5 minutes, 10 minutes to work out what makes them tick and come up with strategies to help them learn specifically for them. A computer will probably do it in 30 seconds. But if after 10 minutes of teaching goes, well done, you've gone from 30 to 60%. I've never seen that before. It's going to be meaningless. They need us for that.
Yeah, happy children learn. Well, we're coming to the end of the time now for our session, and it's been an amazing discussion on the next era of learning, bold visions for change. We've covered everything from preparing students for future workforce, how can we adapt our teaching methods, the role of technology and AI in learning, how we can build resilience and adaptability in students, collaborating between schools and industry, and looking at what success might look like in a kind of future-focused education. So Matt, Darren, Gavin and Michael, I thank you enormously for all of your contributions. It's been such a wide-ranging and fascinating discussion, bringing in so many different skill sets and different perspectives. But I think we would all agree that the time is ripe for change. And listening to all of you, I feel like that we have the people out there who can make this happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. That was a really inspiring and thought-provoking discussion. So all of our attendees, if you would like to connect with our panelists, or you've got additional questions that we couldn't get to, you can reach out to us by emailing us at marketing@gesseducation.com. As we close out the webinar, you'll be redirected to a short survey, and your feedback really helps us to shape the future sessions. So if you can take a moment to share your thoughts, we'd really appreciate it. Today's session is recorded and it will be available soon on the GESS Education website and also our YouTube channel, and we can send that recording to all the attendees by email as well. And an important note to say that GESS Dubai is just around the corner, 12th to the 14th of November at the Dubai World Trade Center, so it's just under 2 weeks away now. And you'll be able to see some of these incredible speakers live and engage in even more inspiring sessions. So I'll just pop it up onto your screens now, and you can register for your free ticket. Yeah, it's popped up. So yeah, massive thank you to our panelists and each of you, our attendees. We hope we can see you again at our next webinar or in person at GESS Dubai. So take care and goodbye for now.